watched a great webinar the other day on Tommy John surgery or ulnar collateral ligament repairs, and I learnt something new, that much like ACL repair, that surgeons are now starting to use a hamstring graft for the ulnar collateral. And as the presenter was talking, I thought, okay, well, which leg would I take a hamstring graft from? And my initial thought was the front leg for a pitcher. And then as he spoke, he said that primarily they look to take it from the back leg, which makes sense in terms of the big eccentric load through the front leg as the pitcher blocks and rotates around it and then follows through. That if you've compromised that hamstring, then you could end up with multiple strains because you don't have the tolerance to the eccentric load there. But either way, it reminded me of something that I discovered over the years as a big factor in hamstring rehab in running athletes, such as the rugby league population that I primarily worked in. And it's the contribution of the glutes to hip extension. In my experience, the majority of athletes with recurrent hamstring strains when they're sprinting weren't great at using the glutes to initiate hip extension from the terminal swing phase of sprinting, which meant that they relied on the hip extension component of their hamstrings to do this, and it just wasn't capable of that type of force tolerance at those professional levels. So, and I think this becomes a big factor in pitchers, whether it's ensuring reduced risk of hamstring strain if you've used your hamstring tendon as part of your ulnar collateral ligament repair, or whether it's a preventative strategy for a pitcher without a compromised UCL. We saw yesterday on opening day that the Braves pitcher Max Fried suffered a hamstring strain, and when I saw the headline, I assumed it was during his delivery, but it turns out it was as he was sprinting to cover first base for a play. But he's injured his back leg, and I think the concept of the hip extension component still holds true. If a back leg, if a pitcher is not using their glutes during a hip extension component of their back leg drive down the mound and relying more on their hamstring, then if you took the graft from there to repair their ulnar collateral, I think they're likely to suffer from recurrent strains in that back leg. Conversely, as the lead leg blocks, there should be a hip extension and rotation component around that front leg, as well as the heavy trunk flexion, hip flexion, eccentric component that's more specifically loading the hamstring. So either way, if they're not having this strong glute contribution to lessen the load on their hamstring, then they're going to have a problem. And I think that's an important thing to identify early in the pitches before they have any problems, but particularly if the hamstring is now seen as a better graft choice for ulnar collateral ligament repair, then it's really important that we identify this as a risk factor to that pitcher straining their hamstring. Otherwise, you're going to rehab their arm, they're going to have a great arm, but they're going to keep missing time because they keep straining their hamstring, which is just as bad anyway. It doesn't really matter why an athlete's missing time, they're missing time. And the best ability in sport is availability. So just something that made me think as I was learning and updating a little bit on current trends in elbow management, and it's an example of how I look at rehab and injury prevention, and why I am comfortable that I could apply my skills and my principles to any sport, because I'm not trying to be an expert in the sport, but rather an expert in rehab. And these are the skills that I have, is to identify key variables that may be difficult to measure, or maybe not the most common cause, but still a factor to consider. And if we address it beforehand, this is where we can move closer to an injury prevention model. But if the injury has happened, then our next best contribution is to avoid as much recurrence of injury as we can. Have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon.